My name is Allison Hayes, and at 28 years old, I never imagined standing alone at my father's funeral while my family whispered about me from across the room. My brother Jason approached me, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "She's just here for the money. Dad's going to cut her off." Their laughter cut through me like glass, but nothing prepared me for what happened next. The lawyer entered holding a USB drive, and suddenly my dad's face appeared on the screen. Before I share what he said, where are you watching from? Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. You won't believe how my family's smug faces changed when they heard my father's last words. Growing up, my relationship with my father, Robert Hayes, was something I treasured. Dad was a successful real estate developer in Boston, building his company from the ground up after inheriting a small construction business from his father. He worked hard, sometimes too hard, but he always made time for me. When I was little, I remember our fishing trips to Cape Cod. When I was around 8 years old, Dad would wake me up before sunrise, and we'd pack the truck with our gear. "Ally," he'd say, using his special nickname for me, "the early bird catches the fish." During those quiet mornings on the water, he'd teach me about patience and perseverance. Those were the moments when I felt closest to him. "The business world works the same way as fishing," he once told me. "You need to know where to look, when to wait, and when to reel in your opportunity." Even as a child, I could see how much the family business meant to him. It was his legacy, his life's work. My brother Jason was 5 years older than me, and from my earliest memories, he was always competing for Dad's approval. When I caught my first fish, Jason had to catch 2. When I got an A on a test, Jason needed an A+. Dad never seemed to notice this unhealthy competition, or if he did, he never addressed it. In his mind, a little sibling rivalry was probably healthy. "Your brother has a natural head for business," Dad would say whenever Jason showed interest in real estate or brought up the company at dinner. The pride in his voice was unmistakable. "He'll take his properties to new heights someday." The expectation was clear from an early age. Both Jason and I would eventually join the family business. Dad had mapped out our entire futures. We would both attend his alma mater, Northeastern University, for business degrees. Jason would learn operations and development, while I would handle client relations and marketing. It was all perfectly planned. But art had captured my heart from an early age. My elementary school teachers praised my drawings. In high school, I won several regional competitions. While Jason was reading business journals and tagging along with Dad to construction sites, I was filling sketchbooks and experimenting with different painting techniques. The first major conflict with my father came during my senior year of high school when college acceptance letters arrived. I chose Rhode Island School of Design over Northeastern. Dad couldn't understand my decision. "Art is a hobby, Allison, not a career," he said during what became a heated argument in his home office. "The family business is your future. It's security. It's what we've been planning for years." "It's what you've been planning," I countered. I never agreed to it. That night marked a turning point in our family dynamic. Jason, ever the opportunist, positioned himself as the loyal child, the one who wouldn't disappoint our father. "Don't worry, Dad," he said at dinner while I sat in silence. "I'll make sure Hayes Properties thrives for another generation." Dad began to grow more distant after that. Our fishing trips stopped. Our conversations became shorter, more formal. He still paid for my education, something I was immensely grateful for, but our relationship had fundamentally changed. There were occasional moments of connection. He attended my first college art exhibition, and I saw a glimpse of pride in his eyes when he saw my work. But those moments became increasingly rare. Jason's manipulation was subtle but effective. He began to control the narrative about me to the rest of the family, to our Uncle Warren and Aunt Patricia, to our cousins, to Dad's business associates. I became the ungrateful daughter who rejected her father's legacy. Jason made sure everyone knew how much this betrayal had hurt Dad. "She doesn't even call him anymore," I overheard Jason telling Uncle Warren at a family Christmas gathering during my sophomore year. The truth was, I had called the week before, but Dad hadn't picked up. When I confronted Jason later, he just shrugged. "I'm just telling it like it is, sis. You made your choice." By the time I graduated from art school, the narrative was firmly established. Jason was the devoted son who would carry on the Hayes legacy. I was the daughter who turned her back on the family. And the worst part was, I could see Dad beginning to believe it too. My college years passed in a blur of art studios, exhibitions, and part-time jobs. Despite the growing distance between us, I still made efforts to maintain my relationship with Dad. I'd send him photographs of my artwork, hoping to show him that my choice wasn't a rejection of him, but a pursuit of my own passion. During my junior year, I created a series of abstract paintings inspired by the Boston skyline. Dad's skyline, as I thought of it, since many of those buildings contained his properties. I was thrilled when a local gallery selected the series for exhibition. I sent Dad an invitation, hopeful that seeing my success might help bridge our gap. "I'd love for you to come," I said during our phone call. "The opening is on Friday at 7 p.m. "I'll check my calendar," he replied, his voice carrying that formal tone he'd adopted with me. Jason and I might be closing on the Harborview property that day. I tried not to let my disappointment show. "Well, the exhibition runs for 2 weeks, so maybe another day would work." "Maybe," he said. "I'll let you know." To my surprise, Dad did show up, not on opening night but the following Tuesday. He arrived alone without telling me he was coming. The gallery owner recognized him from the photo I kept at my display and called me over. "Your work is interesting," Dad said, studying my largest piece. There was something in his voice I couldn't quite read. "You're clearly talented." It wasn't the enthusiastic approval I'd hoped for, but it was something. We had coffee afterward, and for a brief hour it almost felt like old times. He asked about my classes, my plans after graduation. I asked about the business, about his health. We carefully avoided any contentious topics. As we parted, he awkwardly patted my shoulder. "I'm proud of you for working hard, Allison," he said, "even if it's not what I would have chosen." That moment gave me hope. Maybe with time he would fully accept my path. What I didn't know then was that Jason was working diligently to ensure that would never happen. I only discovered the extent of his sabotage years later. After graduation, I moved to New York to pursue my art career. The distance made communication with Dad even more difficult. I'd call on holidays and birthdays, but our conversations remained stilted. Jason, meanwhile, had fully integrated himself into Hayes Properties. According to family updates, he was Dad's right-hand man, involved in every major decision. During one Thanksgiving visit back to Boston, I noticed Dad looking tired. The lines around his eyes had deepened, and he seemed to move more slowly. "Are you feeling okay?" I asked him privately. "Just getting old," he dismissed with a wave of his hand. "Doctor says I need to watch my blood pressure, that's all." I later learned from Aunt Patricia that Dad had experienced a minor heart scare earlier that year. "Jason's been such a rock," she told me. "Taking on extra work so your father can rest more." The implication was clear. While I was off pursuing my selfish dreams, Jason was selflessly supporting Dad. What Aunt Patricia didn't know, what none of us knew, was that Jason's support included filtering Dad's communications. I sent birthday cards that mysteriously never arrived. I left voicemails that were never returned. I extended invitations to my New York exhibitions that were somehow lost. Jason's methods became more direct as Dad's health continued to decline. During my rare visits home, he would create situations that reinforced his narrative about me. He'd schedule important business meetings on days I was visiting, then act disappointed when Dad chose work over spending time with me. "That's just how it is when you run a company, Allison," Jason would say with fake sympathy. "Some of us have responsibilities we can't ignore." 6 months before Dad died, I made one last attempt at reconciliation. I had achieved a significant milestone. My work had been featured in a prestigious Manhattan gallery, and a prominent art critic had praised my innovative vision. I called Dad, excited to share the news. The call went terribly. Dad seemed distant, almost cold. When I told him about the exhibition, he barely acknowledged it. "That's nice," he said flatly. "Jason just secured the largest contract in company history, by the way. The Madison Avenue development." I tried to express genuine happiness for the company's success, but Dad cut me off. "Look, Allison, I'm very busy right now. Hayes Properties requires my full attention. Not all of us have the luxury of pursuing hobbies." His dismissal of my career as a hobby stung. After years of hard work and legitimate accomplishments, he still couldn't see value in my path. When I tried to explain how important art was to me, how it wasn't just a hobby but my profession, he sighed heavily. "I'm too tired for this conversation. Maybe we should talk another time." We never did. That was our last real conversation. I hung up believing our relationship would never be repaired, that he would always see me as the daughter who disappointed him, the daughter who wasn't worth his time. I had no way of knowing then that every word of that conversation had been calculated, not by my father but by Jason, who had been poisoning our relationship for years. And I had no idea that Dad had discovered the truth. Too late for us to reconcile in person, but not too late for him to set things right. I was in my New York apartment preparing for a meeting with a gallery owner when I received the call. It wasn't from Jason or any immediate family member, but from Harold Jenkins, Dad's longtime friend and attorney. "Allison," Harold said, his voice grave, "I'm sorry to inform you that your father suffered a major heart attack last night." My hand gripped the phone tightly. Is he okay?" The pause that followed told me everything before Harold even spoke. "I'm so sorry, Allison. He passed away early this morning. Jason asked me to notify you." Jason asked Harold to call me. My own brother couldn't even pick up the phone to tell me our father had died. I sat down hard on my couch, the room spinning around me. "When did it happen?" I managed to ask. "Around 2 a.m. He was at home. The housekeeper found him when she arrived this morning. I booked the first train to Boston, throwing clothes into a suitcase with shaking hands. During the journey, I called Jason repeatedly. He didn't answer until my 4th attempt. "What is it, Allison? I'm dealing with a lot right now," he snapped when he finally picked up. "I'm on my way to Boston," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Harold told me about Dad. Why didn't you call me yourself?" "I've been busy making arrangements," he replied coldly. "Someone had to step up. I would have helped. If you'd called me right away," Jason scoffed. "Right, like you've been so involved in Dad's life recently." Before I could respond, he continued. "Look, the funeral is scheduled for Friday at St. Mark's. Dad's body is already at the funeral home. Everything's taken care of. Friday. That's only 2 days away. Shouldn't we wait so people have time to? The arrangements have been made, Allison." Dad and I discussed his wishes years ago. Not that you would know anything about that. Every conversation with Jason felt like navigating a minefield. I took a deep breath. Where should I stay? Is the house? The house is full, with Uncle Warren and Aunt Patricia staying there. You should book a hotel. He paused. And Allison. There's a family gathering tomorrow night before the funeral. Immediate family only. The implication was clear. I wasn't welcome. When I arrived in Boston, I went straight to the funeral home. I needed to see Dad to say goodbye in my own way. The funeral director led me to a private viewing room where Dad lay in an expensive casket, looking unervingly peaceful in his best suit. "Hi, Dad," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I'm so sorry we didn't fix things." I stood there for nearly an hour, talking to him quietly, telling him about my life in New York. All the things I would have shared if we'd had more time, if we hadn't let things fall apart. That night, alone in my hotel room, I called my best friend Megan. "They're having a family gathering tomorrow and didn't invite me," I told her, trying not to let my voice break. "That's horrible," Megan said. "Do you want me to come up for the funeral? You shouldn't have to face this alone." Her offer of support meant everything to me. "Could you? I know it's asking a lot." "I'll be on the first train tomorrow," she promised. "We'll get through this together." The day of the funeral arrived with appropriately gloomy weather. Megan and I arrived at St. Mark's 30 minutes early, but the front pews were already filled with family and business associates. Jason, seated in the front row with Uncle Warren and Aunt Patricia, didn't even look up when I entered. We found seats near the middle of the church. As more people arrived, I felt their stares, heard their whispers. The narrative Jason had created followed me like a shadow. The ungrateful daughter, the family disappointment, showing up only now that there might be an inheritance to claim. The service itself was elegant and formal, much like my father. The priest spoke of Dad's business accomplishments, his contributions to the community, his dedicated parenting, looking pointedly at Jason during this last part. When it came time for the eulogy, Jason approached the podium with the confident stride of someone who belongs there. His speech painted a picture of a father-son relationship that seemed almost fictional to me. Weekend fishing trips that continued into his adulthood, late nights discussing business strategy, Dad proudly watching Jason carry on the family legacy. "My father often said that family was everything to him," Jason said, his voice thick with practiced emotion. "He believed in loyalty, in showing up for the people you love, in honoring your commitments." The subtext was unmistakable. Every person in that church knew he was contrasting his dedication with my supposed abandonment. "Some people," Jason continued, glancing in my direction, "choose to abandon their responsibilities, their family legacy, but Dad and I always understood the importance of staying true to your roots." I felt Megan's hand tighten around mine as I struggled to maintain my composure. After the service, people gathered in the church hall for the reception. Several of Dad's business associates approached to offer condolences, though most interactions were brief and awkward. Aunt Patricia hugged me stiffly, then quickly moved on to speak with other guests. I was pouring myself a cup of coffee when Jason approached, flanked by two cousins. "Enjoying yourself?" he asked, his voice low but carrying enough for nearby guests to hear. "It must be nice to show up after years of absence and be treated like family." "Jason, this isn't the time or place," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "We're here to honor Dad." "Honor Dad?" Jason laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "Is that why you're here? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're just here for the money. Dad's going to cut you off, you know." Several heads turned at his raised voice. I felt my face burning with humiliation. "You have no idea why I'm here," I said. "Don't I?" Jason's smile was cruel. "You haven't cared about this family for years. You didn't care when Dad needed heart medication. You didn't care when he was working himself to death to maintain the company that would have secured your future too. You only care now that there might be something in it for you." People were openly staring now. I heard someone snicker. Uncle Warren approached, placing a hand on Jason's shoulder. "Perhaps Allison should just leave," he suggested, not even addressing me directly. "She's not really family anymore, is she?" The laughter that followed from several family members nearly broke me. I considered walking out, sparing myself further humiliation. But something kept me rooted to the spot. I owed it to Dad to see this through. "Despite everything, I'm staying," I said quietly. "Whether you like it or not, he was my father too." Jason shrugged dramatically. "Suit yourself. But don't get your hopes up for tomorrow. Dad knew who really cared about him in the end." Tomorrow. The will reading. I hadn't even been thinking about the inheritance, but clearly everyone else had been. In their minds, that was the only reason I would have come back, to claim what they believed I didn't deserve. As I walked away, I heard Jason's voice carrying across the room. "She'll be singing a different tune tomorrow when she realizes Dad saw through her act years ago." If only I had known then how prophetic those words would be, though not in the way Jason intended. The reception continued like a slow-motion nightmare. People I'd known my entire life either avoided me completely or approached with thinly veiled hostility. My father's business partner of 20 years, Kenneth Sullivan, spoke to me with such forced politeness that it was almost worse than outright rudeness. "Your father was a remarkable man," Kenneth said, glancing repeatedly over my shoulder as if seeking escape. "He built quite a legacy with Jason." "With Jason," I repeated. "Right. The company is in good hands now," he continued, finally meeting my eyes. "Your brother has your father's vision. The transition should be seamless." The message couldn't have been clearer. No one expected me to have any role in Hayes Properties. The succession plan was already established in everyone's minds, and I wasn't part of it. I spotted my cousin Diane, who had been my childhood playmate, speaking with a group near the refreshment table. When she saw me approaching, she whispered something to the others before reluctantly breaking away to greet me. "Allison," she said, her hug so brief it barely qualified as physical contact. "I'm sorry about Uncle Robert." "Thank you," I replied. "How have you been?" "It's been a while." "Fine. Busy with the kids and everything." She glanced back at her group. "Jason mentioned you're living in New York now. That must be interesting." "It is. I've been building my career as an artist. I actually have a gallery show next month that—" "Oh, that's nice," Diane interrupted, clearly uninterested. "Must be fun to follow your dreams while Jason's been here handling everything." She didn't even try to hide her judgment. "Excuse me, I should check on my husband." Before I could respond, she was gone. I stood alone again, feeling increasingly like an unwelcome intruder at my own father's funeral. I found Megan by the windows, mercifully alone. "This is worse than I expected," I whispered to her. "They all hate me." "They don't know you," Megan replied firmly. "They only know the story Jason's been telling them, which they all believe because it's easier than questioning it. Look, you're here for your dad, not for them. Just get through today and the will reading tomorrow. Then we can go back to New York." The will reading. My stomach tightened at the thought. If the funeral was this bad, how much worse would tomorrow be? Based on Jason's confidence, I fully expected to be publicly disinherited, providing the final confirmation of Dad's disappointment in me. I was lost in these thoughts when I heard Jason's voice, louder than appropriate for the setting, clearly meant to carry. "I still can't believe she had the nerve to show up today," he was saying to Uncle Warren and two men I recognized as board members of Hayes Properties. "After how she broke Dad's heart, refusing to even visit when he was sick." I felt a flash of indignation. I hadn't known Dad was seriously ill. No one had told me. But before I could decide whether to confront him, Jason continued. "Well, she's in for a surprise tomorrow," he said with a smirk. "Dad updated his will last year, after she refused to come home for his birthday. He finally realized she didn't deserve any part of what he built." One of the board members noticed me standing nearby and nudged Jason, who turned with exaggerated surprise. "Oh, Allison, didn't see you there," he said, not even attempting to sound sincere. "We were just discussing tomorrow's meeting with the lawyer. You are planning to attend, aren't you?" His tone made it clear he expected, hoped even, that I would slink away to avoid the public humiliation he believed awaited me. "Of course I'll be there," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. Jason smiled coldly. "Excellent. It should be enlightening for everyone." Uncle Warren didn't even attempt to hide his disdain. "I don't know why you're bothering Allison. Robert made his feelings quite clear while he was alive." "Did he?" I asked, suddenly wondering if I'd missed something important. "What exactly did he say?" "That's between him and the family members who actually stayed in touch," Warren replied. "Maybe if you'd picked up the phone more often in the last few years, you'd know." I felt my face flush with anger and shame. "I tried to stay in touch. It's not as simple as you're making it sound." "Never is with you, is it?" Jason interjected. "Always an excuse. Always someone else's fault. Dad got tired of it, Allison. He got tired of waiting for you to grow up and accept your responsibilities." The conversation had attracted attention. Several nearby groups had gone quiet, openly watching our confrontation. I felt dozens of eyes on me, judging, condemning. "You have no idea what my relationship with Dad was like," I said, my voice finally breaking. "You have no right to." "I have every right," Jason cut in. "I was there. Every day. Through everything. While you were off playing artist in New York, I was helping him run his company, taking him to doctor's appointments, being an actual daughter. Sorry, I meant actual child." The deliberate slip elicited a few chuckles from the onlookers. My humiliation was complete. I stood there, fighting back tears as Jason smiled triumphantly. "Face it, Allison. You're just here for the money. Dad's gonna cut you off. Everyone here knows it. You know it. Tomorrow we'll just make it official." I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at me to flee this horrible place. These horrible people who had accepted Jason's version of reality without question. But leaving would only confirm their beliefs about me. Despite the burning humiliation, despite the tears I could barely hold back, I stood my ground. "I guess we'll all find out tomorrow, won't we?" I managed to say before walking away with as much dignity as I could muster. Megan found me in the church's small garden, finally allowing myself to cry. "Those people are toxic," she said, sitting beside me. "Jason has them all completely fooled." "Maybe he's right," I whispered, doubt creeping in. "Maybe I should have tried harder with Dad. Maybe I don't deserve anything." "That's ridiculous," Megan said firmly. "Your brother is manipulative and cruel. And whatever happens tomorrow with the will, you know your worth. Your father's money doesn't define your value, Allison." She was right, of course. But as we left the reception, I couldn't help feeling that tomorrow's will reading would be the final verdict on my relationship with my father, a public confirmation of his disappointment in me. I had no idea then that Dad had left a very different message. For me and for everyone else. The next morning dawned with the same gray skies that had hung over the funeral. I dressed carefully in a simple black dress, trying to prepare myself mentally for what was to come. Megan had offered to accompany me to the will reading, but I declined. This was something I needed to face alone. "Call me the second it's over," she insisted as I left the hotel. "No matter what happens." I promised I would, though I expected to be making that call in tears. The law offices of Jenkins, Baxter, and Wright occupied the top floor of one of Dad's downtown properties, a detail that felt like salt in the wound as I rode the elevator upward. Harold Jenkins, Dad's friend and attorney, had been handling the family's legal affairs for over 30 years. He would be the one to deliver what I assumed would be my final disappointment from my father. When I arrived, the conference room was already filled with family members and key business associates. Jason sat at the head of the table, already positioning himself as the new patriarch of the Hayes family. Uncle Warren and Aunt Patricia sat to his right, with the company's CFO and 2 board members adjacent. They were all engaged in comfortable conversation, the atmosphere almost celebratory. The chatter died down when I entered. Jason looked up with an expression of mock surprise. "Allison, you actually came." He gestured to an empty chair at the far end of the table. "We saved you a seat." The seating arrangement wasn't subtle. Me, isolated at the foot of the table while Jason commanded the head position. I took my assigned place without comment, ignoring the whispers and glances. "I was just telling everyone about the Madison Avenue project," Jason continued. "The one Dad and I worked on in his final months. It's going to revolutionize that whole neighborhood." The implication was clear. This was a family business discussion that didn't concern me. I remained silent, counting the minutes until this ordeal would be over. At precisely 10 a.m., Harold Jenkins entered the conference room. Unlike the others, he greeted me with genuine warmth. "Allison, thank you for coming," he said, briefly squeezing my shoulder before taking his position at the center of the table. "I'm very sorry about your father. He spoke of you often." This simple kindness nearly broke my composure. I nodded gratefully, not trusting myself to speak. Harold placed his briefcase on the table and addressed the room. "Before we begin, I want to thank you all for coming today. Robert Hayes was not only my client but my dear friend for over 3 decades. His loss is deeply felt by everyone in this room." There were murmurs of agreement. Harold continued. "Robert was meticulous in his planning. As you all know, he left very specific instructions about how today should proceed." Jason leaned forward, his expression confident. "We're all eager to respect Dad's wishes and move forward with the transition he planned." Harold nodded, but his expression remained neutral. "Robert's instructions for this reading are somewhat unconventional. He prepared a video statement to accompany the formal will document." This announcement was met with confused looks. Video wills weren't unheard of, but they weren't common practice either, especially for someone as traditionally minded as my father. "A video?" Jason asked, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face for the first time. "He never mentioned that to me. Robert recorded it privately about 3 months ago," Harold explained. "He was very specific that it should be viewed before the written provisions are discussed." I watched Jason's reaction carefully. The confidence that had radiated from him all morning seemed to waver slightly. He recovered quickly, but I had seen it, a moment of genuine surprise, perhaps even concern. "Well, let's get on with it then," Jason said with forced casualness. "I'm sure Dad just wanted to add a personal touch to his formal wishes." Harold nodded to his assistant, who had entered with a laptop and projector. "We'll display the video on the screen at the end of the table." As the equipment was set up, the atmosphere in the room shifted. What had felt like a formality, a public confirmation of decisions already made, now held an element of unpredictability. I noticed Jason whispering intensely to Uncle Warren, whose expression grew increasingly concerned. "Robert was very explicit that everyone listed in the will be present for this video," Harold said, consulting a paper from his briefcase. "Let me confirm attendance." He read through a list of names, checking off each person as they acknowledged their presence. When he finished, he nodded. "Satisfactory. Excellent. We're all here." He turned to his assistant. "We're ready to begin." The lights dimmed slightly, and Harold inserted a USB drive into the laptop. After a moment of technical adjustments, the projector illuminated the screen, and there was my father. The sight of him, healthy, composed, alive, hit me like a physical blow. He sat at his desk in the home office, wearing the navy blue suit he reserved for important meetings. His silver hair was neatly combed, his expression serious but calm. He looked directly into the camera, creating the unsettling illusion that he was looking at each of us in the room. The conference room fell completely silent. Even Jason seemed momentarily stunned by this posthumous appearance of our father. "Hello everyone," Dad began, his voice so familiar it made my throat tighten with grief. "If you're watching this, then I'm no longer with you. I've asked Harold to share this message because there are truths that need to be spoken, truths I regrettably didn't recognize until it was almost too late." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. I glanced around the table and noticed that everyone was leaning forward slightly, hanging on my father's every word. "What I'm about to say will surprise many of you," Dad continued. "It will upset some of you. But before I leave this world, I need to set the record straight." I felt a strange sensation in my chest, not quite hope, but something adjacent to it. My father's expression had softened, and for a brief moment, I saw a glimpse of the dad I remembered from those early fishing trips, the dad who had loved me unconditionally before everything changed. "This is primarily a message about truth," he said. "About family. About betrayal and forgiveness." His eyes seemed to look directly at me. "And about second chances that come too late, but perhaps not too late to make right." As my father continued speaking, I realized that whatever I had expected from today's proceedings, I had been completely unprepared for what was about to unfold. "I want to begin by speaking directly to my daughter Allison," Dad said, his eyes seeming to find mine through the screen. "If you're here, and I hope with all my heart that you are, I need to say something I should have said to you in person. I'm sorry." A collective murmur ran through the room. Jason shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "I'm sorry for the distance that grew between us. I'm sorry for not supporting your dreams. Most of all, I'm sorry for believing lies about you that I should have questioned." Dad's expression turned pained. "You see, I recently discovered something that has changed everything I thought I knew about our family dynamic over the past several years. About 6 months ago, I had another minor heart episode. The doctors advised me to reduce my workload, so I began working from home more often." He leaned forward slightly. "One afternoon, I was looking for some documents in Jason's office at the house when I found something disturbing, a drawer full of cards and letters. 'You, Allison,' I gasped audibly. Around the table, heads turned toward me, then swiveled to Jason, who had gone very still. 'Birthday cards I supposedly never received,' Dad continued. Invitations to your art shows. Notes updating me on your life. All unopened. All hidden away. His voice hardened. All deliberately kept from me. Jason stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. Dad was confused after his heart. Mr. Hayes, please sit down, Harold interjected firmly. Your father's instructions were explicit. The video must be played in its entirety without interruption. Jason sank back into his chair, his face flushed. On screen, Dad continued. That discovery led me to investigate further. I hired a private investigator, without Jason's knowledge, to look into other discrepancies I'd begun to notice. What I found was deeply troubling. Dad picked up a folder from his desk. The investigator discovered that Jason had been intercepting Allison's calls to the house and the office. He'd been deleting her voicemails, returning her calls when he knew she wouldn't answer, then telling me she was unavailable. He'd been actively sabotaging any attempt at reconciliation between us. The conference room had gone deathly quiet. I felt tears streaming down my face, unable to process the magnitude of what I was hearing. But that wasn't all, Dad said gravely. The investigation revealed something even more disturbing about the business. Jason had been engaging in questionable practices that go against everything Hayes Properties stands for. He'd been cutting corners on building materials, falsifying inspection reports, and, in one case, bribing a city official to expedite permits. Someone gasped. The board members exchanged alarmed glances. I built this company on integrity, Dad said, his voice rising with emotion. My father taught me that our name meant something, that a Hayes property was built to last, built with pride and honesty. Jason betrayed those values for profit and expediency. Jason was now visibly sweating. His earlier confidence completely evaporated. This is a misunderstanding, he said to no one in particular. Dad was confused. The medication. Mr. Hayes, Harold warned again. Please. On screen, Dad's expression softened again. Allison, when I discovered all this, my first instinct was to call you immediately. But I realized something important. You shouldn't have to hear my apology over the phone. You deserved better than that. I made arrangements to come to New York to see your life there, to meet you on your terms. My heart clenched painfully. But you never came, I whispered. As if hearing me, Dad continued. I had planned to visit you the week after that final call, the one where I was so distant. That call wasn't what you thought. I was distant because I was angry. Not at you but at Jason, and at myself for being so blind for so long. I was planning to surprise you in New York to see your gallery, to finally tell you in person how proud I am of you. Dad paused, emotion overtaking him momentarily. My heart had other plans, it seems. So this video will have to serve as the apology and recognition you deserve. He picked up another folder. I've been following your career, Allison. Not through Jason's filtered updates, but through art magazines and gallery websites. I've seen your reviews, your exhibitions. I've even purchased several of your pieces through an intermediary. This revelation stunned me completely. Dad had bought my artwork, had supported my career anonymously. Your creativity, your vision, your determination to follow your own path. These are qualities to be admired, not condemned. I was wrong to try to force you into a mold that didn't fit. You aren't just a talented artist, Allison. You're a businesswoman in your own right, building something from nothing, just as I did when I was young. Dad straightened in his chair, his expression becoming more formal. Now, to the matter of my will and the future of Hayes Properties. Jason leaned forward again, tension evident in every line of his body. Given what I've discovered about Jason's business practices and his deliberate deception regarding Allison, I cannot in good conscience leave the company solely in his hands. My original will, drafted 5 years ago, would have made Jason the primary inheritor of both my personal estate and Hayes Properties, with a small trust established for Allison. Jason nodded slightly, as if this confirmed what he'd been telling everyone. That will has been revoked, Dad continued firmly. In its place, I have established the following provisions. The room went completely still. I could almost hear hearts beating in the silence. To my son, Jason Hayes, I leave a cash inheritance of $500,000 to be held in trust and distributed in annual payments of $50,000, contingent upon his cooperation with the ethics investigation I have initiated at Hayes Properties and his completion of a business ethics program at Northeastern University. Jason's face drained of color. What? He whispered hoarsely. To my daughter, Allison Hayes, I leave my personal residence and its contents, my personal investment portfolio, and 51% ownership of Hayes Properties. The room erupted in shocked exclamations. Uncle Warren actually stood up in protest before Harold motioned him firmly back to his seat. On screen, Dad continued calmly through the uproar. Allison's artistic vision and ethical foundation make her the ideal person to guide Hayes Properties into the future. She may choose to take an active role in management, or to serve as chairperson of the board while continuing her artistic career. That will be her decision. I couldn't breathe. This couldn't be happening. After years of believing Dad had rejected my choices, he was not only affirming them, but entrusting me with his life's work. The remaining 49% of company shares will be distributed among the current board members and senior management, with specific allocations detailed in the written will, Dad explained. I've also established a foundation in my name to support arts education in Boston, to be directed by Allison. Dad looked directly into the camera again. I know this comes as a shock to everyone, particularly to Jason. Son, I hope that in time you will understand that this decision comes from love. Love for you, for Allison, and for the company that bears our name. The path you've been on leads nowhere good. My hope is that these provisions will guide you back to the values I tried to instill in you. Jason stood suddenly, knocking his chair backward. This is insane. He was manipulated. I'll contest this. I anticipated that reaction, Dad said, almost as if responding directly to Jason's outburst. Harold has comprehensive documentation of everything the investigation uncovered, including recorded conversations, falsified documents, and financial records. Contesting the will would only result in making this information public, possibly leading to criminal charges. Jason fell silent, his face a mask of fury and disbelief. Allison, Dad continued, his voice softening again. I know this is an enormous responsibility that you never asked for. If you choose to sell your shares or to take a different path entirely, I've included provisions for that as well. But I hope you'll consider accepting this role. Hayes Properties could benefit tremendously from your fresh perspective and ethical foundation. Dad paused, emotion returning to his features. More than anything, I wish we'd had the chance to reconcile in person, to go fishing again, talk about your art, to rebuild what was broken. I'm so deeply sorry that won't happen now. Tears flowed freely down my face. Around the table, even those who had been coldest to me looked uncomfortable, avoiding my eyes. I'll conclude with this, Dad said. Family is complicated. Business is complicated. But integrity should never be complicated. It's either there or it isn't. Allison never lost hers, even when it would have been easier to compromise. That's why, in the end, she is the right person to carry on the Hayes legacy. Dad smiled, a genuine warm smile that I hadn't seen in years. I love you both, Jason and Allison. I hope this decision leads to healing, to growth, and ultimately to a stronger family and company. Thank you all for listening. The screen went black. For several moments, no one spoke or moved. The silence was broken by the sound of Jason's harsh laughter. You think this changes anything, he said, glaring at me. You know nothing about running a real estate company. The board will never accept you. He looked around the table for support, but the board members were carefully avoiding his gaze. Harold cleared his throat. Perhaps this would be a good time to take a brief recess before we continue with the formal reading of the written will. There are additional documents and evidence that Mr. Hayes instructed me to share regarding the investigation he mentioned. Jason stormed out without another word. Most of the others followed, murmuring among themselves, casting uncertain glances in my direction. Only Harold remained, gathering his papers methodically. "Did you know?" I asked him quietly. "About all of this?" Harold nodded. "Your father confided in me after he made his discovery. He was heartbroken about the time he'd lost with you." He paused, looking at me kindly. "He was very proud of you, Allison. He kept a portfolio of articles about your exhibitions in his desk drawer. The real one, not the one Jason controlled." The tears came again, but different this time. Tears of grief mixed with a profound sense of vindication and lost opportunity. "I wish I'd known. I wish we'd had more time." "So did he," Harold said gently. "But he also believed you have the strength to handle this responsibility. He wouldn't have left you the company otherwise." As the others began to filter back in for the continuation of the proceedings, I sat straight in my chair, wiping away my tears. The path ahead would be challenging: a company to learn, a brother to deal with, a legacy to honor. But for the first time in years, I felt my father's love and approval. Not despite my choices, but because of them. And that made all the difference. The days following the will reading passed in a blur of meetings, legal briefings, and emotional processing. Jason, true to his nature, immediately hired an attorney to contest the will. But Harold was prepared. The evidence my father had collected was comprehensive and damning. After a brief but intense legal battle, Jason withdrew his challenge, accepting the terms as written. I hadn't seen or spoken to him since he stormed out of the conference room. Harold informed me that Jason had moved out of Dad's house, my house now, and taken an extended vacation abroad. I couldn't help but feel a complex mixture of anger, pity, and lingering familial attachment. Despite everything he'd done, he was still my brother, the little boy who had once built sandcastles with me on Cape Cod beaches. My first major decision was whether to relocate back to Boston or attempt to manage the company remotely from New York. After careful consideration and discussions with Harold and the board, I decided to move back. Temporarily, at least until I got a handle on the business and established a management structure I trusted. The company transition wasn't seamless. Several long-time employees who were loyal to Jason resigned. Others were skeptical of my leadership, questioning what an artist could possibly know about real estate development. I faced these challenges head-on, approaching the business with the same dedication I'd given to my art career. "I'm not pretending to be an expert in real estate," I told the assembled employees during my first company-wide meeting, "but I know my father's values, and I know mine. Hayes Properties will be run with integrity, creativity, and respect for every person who works here." I surrounded myself with experienced advisors, spent long hours studying the business, and slowly began to earn the respect of the company. I also initiated a thorough ethics review of all current projects, making necessary changes even when they impacted the bottom line. The Madison Avenue project, the one Jason had bragged about at the funeral, required significant revisions after we discovered multiple safety shortcuts. The additional costs cut into profits, but the resulting building was something we could all be proud of. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, 6 months after Dad's death, I felt his presence strongly, approving of the difficult but right decisions. Gradually, family members began to reach out. The first was my cousin Diane, who called hesitantly one afternoon. "I owe you an apology," she said without preamble. "I believed Jason's version of things without ever asking for yours. That wasn't fair." "No, it wasn't," I agreed, not making it easy for her. Years of judgment and exclusion couldn't be erased with one phone call. "I understand if you don't want to speak to me," Diane continued, "but I'd like a chance to rebuild our relationship, if you're willing." I considered her request. I'm open to that. But it will take time. And I need you to understand that I never abandoned Dad. I never stopped caring about this family. I know that now, she said quietly. We all do. Similar conversations followed with Uncle Warren, Aunt Patricia, and other extended family members. Some were sincere in their remorse. Others seemed more interested in maintaining connections to the family business than in genuine reconciliation. I welcomed the former while maintaining healthy boundaries with the latter. One of my most meaningful discoveries came when I finally moved into Dad's house. In his study, behind a false panel in the bookcase that I remembered from childhood treasure hunts, I found a collection of my artwork. Not just the pieces he'd purchased anonymously, but photographs of my student work, newspaper clippings about exhibitions, even a framed copy of my art school diploma. Alongside these treasures was a leather-bound journal. Opening it with trembling hands, I found entries dating back years, chronicling Dad's thoughts about the business, about Jason, and about me. The early entries reflected his disappointment in my career choice. But as time passed, his tone changed. Saw Allison's new exhibition online today. Read an entry from 2 years before his death. Her work is getting attention from serious critics. There's a depth to her paintings that reminds me of how she used to see the world as a child, always noticing things the rest of us missed. I wish I could tell her how proud I am. But the distance between us now feels unbridgeable. Jason says she doesn't return his calls either. I wonder if she's truly moved on from this family. Later entries became more questioning, showing the first seeds of doubt about Jason's narrative. The final entries documented his shocking discoveries and his determination to make things right. The private investigator confirmed my worst fears today. He wrote 3 months before his death. Jason has been systematically keeping Allison away from me, intercepting our communications for years. How could I have been so blind? My son has betrayed not only his sister but the core values I thought I'd instilled in him. I need to fix this, to reach out to Allison directly, to tell her the truth, to ask her forgiveness. I'm planning a trip to New York next month. I only hope it's not too late to repair what's been broken. Tears streamed down my face as I read his final entry, dated just days before his heart attack. Made arrangements for New York. Haven't felt this hopeful in years. Also met with Harold about changing my will. If something happens before I can reconcile with Allison in person, at least she'll know the truth. At least she'll know I loved her. That I recognized her strength and integrity. Jason's actions must have consequences. Though it breaks my heart to implement them, I only hope that someday both my children will find their way back to the values that matter most. These discoveries helped me begin to heal, to forgive both my father and myself for the years we'd lost. I couldn't change the past, but I could honor his memory by leading the company with the integrity he valued and by nurturing my artistic vision alongside this new responsibility. 6 months after taking over Hayes Properties, I launched the Robert Hayes Foundation for Arts Education, using company profits to fund art programs in Boston's underserved schools. For the foundation's inaugural exhibition, I displayed my new series of paintings inspired by the fishing trips of my childhood, alongside a carefully curated selection of emerging local artists. The exhibition opening was well attended by both the art community and the business world. As I stood addressing the crowd, I felt a sense of integration between these two aspects of my life that had once seemed irreconcilable. My father taught me 2 important lessons, I told the assembled guests. First, that integrity is non-negotiable. And second, that sometimes the most valuable perspective comes from stepping away and seeing things differently. That's what art does for us. Challenges us to see the world through new eyes. The Robert Hayes Foundation aims to give that gift to the next generation. After the speeches, as guests mingled and admired the artwork, Harold approached me with a gentle smile. "Your father would be incredibly proud," he said, glancing around at the exhibition. "You've managed to honor both his legacy and your own vision. Not many people could navigate that balance so gracefully." "I wish he could see it," I replied, the familiar ache of loss momentarily sharpening. "In some ways, I think he did see it," Harold said thoughtfully. "He recognized your potential long before any of us. That's why he made the choice he did." The next morning, I visited Dad's grave for the first time since the funeral. I brought a simple bouquet of wildflowers and sat beside the headstone in the quiet cemetery. "I'm trying to do right by you, Dad," I said softly. "The company is doing well. We just launched the foundation. I think you'd approve of the changes we've made." Paused, gathering my thoughts. "I found your journal. I know you wanted to reconcile. I wish we'd had that chance. But knowing you were proud of me, that you understood, it means everything." I told him about the business, about my art, about the challenge and unexpected satisfaction of bringing these worlds together. As I spoke, I felt a sense of peace settling over me, a feeling that, despite everything, something broken had been mended. "I haven't heard from Jason," I continued. "Harold says he's in Europe somewhere. I hope someday we can find a way forward, but I'm not holding my breath. Some wounds take longer to heal than others." Before leaving, I placed my hand on the cool granite of the headstone. "I love you, Dad. Thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't know you did. I'll try to make you proud every day." Life continues to be a complex balance of business leadership and artistic pursuit. Some days I feel overwhelmed by the dual responsibilities, wondering if I can truly do justice to both. Other days bring unexpected moments of clarity and purpose, confirmation that I'm on the right path. What I've learned through all of this is that family relationships are rarely simple. They're shaped by misunderstandings, by the stories we tell ourselves and each other, by opportunities taken and missed. My father and I lost years we can never get back. But in the end, truth prevailed. His final act gave me not just a business empire, but something far more valuable: the knowledge that he saw me, truly saw me, and loved me for exactly who I am. Have you ever experienced a moment when truth finally came to light after years of misunderstanding? How did it change your perspective on your relationships? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, hit the like button and subscribe for more stories about family, healing, and finding your path. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember that sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the most unexpected packages.